This case is frankly terrifying. It was recently showcased on a crime show on Netflix and came to my desk when I first started investigating the deep web. It happened in Toronto, Canada, around November 2012. The following are the testimonies of Detective Debbie Harris, Detective Charles Coffey, and Detective Josh McKenzie. Some names and details were changed to protect the current investigation. The following is part of the testimony of Detective Debbie Harris. It is 4 in the morning, and the alarm goes off, so that I can be at work at 5:30. When I arrived at the station, I put my drink down, and the telephone rang. On the other end was a person with a powerful accent but a calm voice that asked me, "Are you the leader investigator on the Scandinaviratnam missing person case?" When he stated that, my stomach just dropped. I first learned about Scandinaviratnam 2 years before being declared missing. For a long time, we searched for him, but we never found out what happened. He certainly got inside my brain. The person calling was a detective from Bern, Switzerland. He told me he had news that Skanda had been kidnapped, murdered, and then consumed by a cannibal. When I got that call from Switzerland, I was operating in the Village, the heart of the LGBTQ+ community in the Toronto Great Area. The detective had come across a website on the dark web called Zombie Meat, which was all about cannibalism. Once inside the website, he began to chat with a member from Toronto named Chefmate50. Chefmate50 had described how he kidnapped, killed, and ingested a brown-skinned male from the Village between 2009 and 2011. My gut is telling me this is ludicrous, but then my head is telling me, well, if there was even in the slightest chance he's a cannibal living in, or around the city of Toronto, I had to investigate it. I went to the deep web and looked for a site called Zambian Meat. After entering the site, right on the website's front page were 2 gentlemen, and they had a woman on a spit. I couldn't believe what I saw on the screen. I was astounded. I was taken aback by the reality of all this. I had to uncover this Checkmate50. The username had an associated email address, chefmate50@yahoo.com. After speaking to my boss and getting some authorizations, I was able to review some of the emails that Yahoo Canada provided. I began opening them out, and my jaw dropped after the second, third, and fourth email. This guy Checkmate50 was emailing people worldwide talking about how he wanted to torture them and how he wanted to have them for dinner. I must see the homicide crew, I thought. There's the chance of an actual cannibal residing in Toronto. The next day I had a meeting with the Toronto Police Homicide Unit. I was nervous whether they would say, "Yeah, you have sufficient to move forward with the investigation," but after going through the briefing file, you could see them gradually creeping down in their seats. They went from these know-it-all, to experience the same emotions I had, an overwhelming sense of, is this for real? I eventually had a name from Yahoo Canada for the individual called Chefmate50. It was James Brunton. He was a married family man. He lived in a suburban area in Ontario, northeast of Toronto. No criminal record, worked at the local hockey arena and helped out as a volunteer on a telephone hotline for the suicidal. He appeared on the exterior to be dedicated to his community. Still, there is no description of what a cannibal should look like. Homicide determined that it would be good to have a team set up, and I was assigned as the lead investigator on what was called Project Houston 56. I was highly excited that they were taking me seriously. The first thing I had to determine was, are there any other missing men that I should be aware of? As part of my investigation, I went to the Canadian National Missing Persons Database. I immediately identified a second person, Abdul Basir, gone missing in December 2010 from the Gay Village. After I took a look at the photo of this missing person, I noted they were both brown-skinned, they were both middle-aged, both had dark hair, both had moustaches, and they both had small beards. I went back to the database, finding a third missing person, Majid Koyhan, missing from the Gay Village 2 years later in October 2012. I'm looking and thinking, oh boy. I felt it in my gut. This was the same person responsible for whatever happened to the 3 men, but without any bodies. I had no concrete evidence that there was a serial killer out there. I needed to see if there was any evidence linking Jane Brunton to the missing men. I needed an IT person who is tech savvy, and could create a profile, and enter Zambian Meets. The first person I thought of was Detective Charles Coffey. The following is the testimony of Detective Charles Coffey. I received a phone call from Toronto, and it was explained to me how Skander Navaratnam, Abdul Basir, and Majid Koyhan were possibly victims of cannibalism. This is a topic that you don't realize is real, and being asked to investigate such a topic, I was excited, but I was also disturbed realizing there was cannibalism out there. The next day, I created an account and successfully became a member of Zambian Meet. There were people there who were looking to be killed, slaughtered, and people who were performing the butchering. I was able to create a glossary. To find a long pig, which is a potential willing victim. A chef, which is considered a qualified cannibal. And a master chef, a qualified cannibal, who can butcher and prepare meat. Brunton used the username ChefMade50. He explained in the chat room that he was the real thing, that he had tasted and consumed human meat. He would go into great detail on how he had performed the butchering of human beings, with descriptions on how to properly kill, cook, and store human flesh. Very direct, very interested, and very knowledgeable. To get more information on James to prove if this man was really what we thought, or just a sick fantasy fest, we needed to get into his home and hack his computer so that we could forensically go through it. We were trying to get in the house secretly for 4 weeks, and there was never an opportunity. Either James was there himself, or his wife was there. I would be working from 7 AM till 1 or 2 in the morning every day. In December, I received judicial authorization to get all of Brenton's emails in real time. I saw an email about James visiting his daughter with his wife down in the United States for Christmas. Finally, that was our opportunity to get into the house without being discovered safely and clone the computer. This would be the first Christmas I wasn't going to spend with my daughter. It was just destroying me inside. I had to leave my house at 4 in the morning. I've got about 4 hours of sleep. I drove to a car park close to Brenton's house. We had our mobile and crime teams there. We didn't have warrants to search the home, so we started mirroring the hard drive from his computer onto an external drive. I was certainly hopeful that we would find something on the computer, because if it was just holiday snaps and innocent photos, I had ruined my Christmas day with my daughter for nothing. Once the tech support team could clone the computer, that information was extracted and brought back to Charles for further investigation. There were hundreds of thousands of pieces of information, emails, photos, videos, and web searches. Going through Brenton's emails, I came across a conversation where he had described a cabin 2 hours north of Toronto. He talked about killing people in the back portion of the cabin. There was a place with a large hoist to allow bodies to have their blood drained. It was shocking. This was big. We had the location where Brenton allegedly committed these killings. We now had to determine where this cabin was. We threw a large map of the area on the table, and we did a large circle, 2.5 hours from Toronto. In reality, we had a challenging task ahead. It was like finding a needle in a haystack. You're talking hundreds of square miles. I was looking at all of these possible areas. I thought to scan Branton's phone records, and it showed that he'd made a call from the Bancroft area, just 2 days before he went missing. Bancroft's a 2.5-hour drive north of Toronto, with a lot of dense woods surrounding it. We got police drones flying above the trees, looking for any glimpse of where the cabin might be within that area of Bancroft, but the trees were so close together it was difficult to get a good look at some of the cabins in the area. We have to put boots on the ground, and we have to get people out there and try to find hard evidence that links Brunton to any of these missing men. Next, is the testimony of Detective Josh Mackenzie. Debbie was saying we have to go find this cabin, and I was already kind of putting my hand up. That's something I would totally be into doing. I had always been a farm boy, and this type of detective work was right down my alley. Detective Debbie was one of the hardest working people I've ever worked with. She always treated me like an equal, allowing me to run cases on my own to get me experience. That really helped shape me as an investigator. I always liked the work outside the office. I like going out, finding things, figuring things out. I drove to Bancroft with another investigator. We got out of the car, and started walking. It's very remote, you know. There are trees everywhere. After some time, I saw one purple ribbon tied to a tree. Then, I looked again, and saw a second one a couple of trees down. Somebody was trying to create a path leading somewhere more secluded. We took a few steps, and a gunshot was heard. The gunshot ricocheted through the trees and then suddenly stopped, and it was completely quiet. It's not hunting season. There's no reason why we should be hearing gunshots. I remember looking at my phone, and we didn't have any cell phone service. I started thinking, oh man, should we need to call for backup or need help in any way? We couldn't do that. I was taking slower steps when I saw a long beam suspended, probably about 15 to 20 feet in the air. It had hooks on it and ropes to a pulley system that you could raise 2 different heights and suspend really whatever you wanted on it. Behind the pulley system, there was a cabin. The other investigator and I separated, ensuring that we had all of our surroundings covered. I looked through the window and saw a table and 3 chairs, just like the one described in Brunton's emails. There's a fire pit in the back of the building, and on top of that, there was a piece of iron fence, like a massive grate for a barbecue. Near the fire pit, there were many boots and shoes nailed to this tree. Some of those shoes had burn marks on the toes. My mind started spinning at that point. I found the spot where I could get 1 bar of cell phone service and called Detective Debbie. Back to Detective Debbie Harris' testimony. My phone rings, and it's Josh. You will not believe this, but there are several pairs of boots, and they're all just hanging from this tree, he says. I knew what he was thinking, and he knew what I was thinking. Were these shoes from men who have now been cannibalized? I told Josh to gather the shoes, so I could extrapolate some DNA to see if they match any of the 3 missing men. A few days later, I was going through some of the emails that were on Branton's computer. I could notice that Josh Mackenzie was getting up his desk, and walking towards me with important information. The DNA from all the shoes was negative for any of our missing men, or anyone in the National Data Bank, as a matter of fact. We still didn't have any hard evidence to move forward in the investigation. Every time I spoke to a family member or friend of one of the missing men, they wanted answers, and I couldn't give them those answers, which internally was constantly causing pressure. Detective Coffey's testimony. I spent the next couple of months searching through Brunton's computer for evidence. I'd wake up, and during breakfast, I'd already be thinking about the case. It's some of the most disturbing material anyone will ever see. I couldn't talk to my wife about the investigation. She never really fully understood what I was going through. I couldn't bring my family into such a warped, horrific world. I discovered the series of emails in which Brunton conversed with a young male. In these conversations, I uncovered a contract that was from October 2009. I, being of sound mind and body, in fully understanding of all the consequences do hereby enter into an agreement with a person known as Chefmate from Zambian, hereafter known as Master. It is agreed that after my 18th birthday, I will enter into his hands and place myself in his full control. After that, Master can have my body to butcher and eat as desired. Just absolutely disgusting. This boy is 1 year younger than my daughter, and this predator is preying on him. How can any human being ever speak to somebody like that, let alone take advantage of someone who's only 15 years old? It makes me sick. We traced the teenager's address to a home in Colorado through help with our sexual exploitation unit. Thank God he's alive, I thought. He explained that he had no intentions on going through with the contract, but Brenton pressured him to commit, and when the teenager refused, Brenton asked him to send pictures of him naked. Detective Coffey's testimony. I opened a file in 2003, on May 1st. I started realizing I was looking at a video inside a hockey arena locker room, with young males. They were changing in and out of their hockey gear, and into their clothes, and Brenton was filming them while they were changing. These boys are in the hockey rink where they feel in a safe environment, and you have this predator in the change room taking advantage of their trust. This was child exploitation, and I now had grounds for an arrest. But if I arrested Brunton right now, I may never get the evidence that I need to connect him to the 3 missing men. It was killing me inside, and knowing what he was doing in the ice hockey arenas, time was no longer on our side. Our action plan was to get an undercover officer to go onto Zambian Meats and Meat, pretending to be a long pig, someone who wants to give himself up and be eaten by a master chef. The moment the profile went live on the dark web, Chefmate 50 sent our profile an email asking us to speak to him. Brenton told our undercover officer he wanted to take him to his cabin in the woods, where he promised to slaughter and then eat him. Our undercover officer agreed to everything that Brenton wanted and gave details of a flight he'd be taking into Toronto on the morning of May 11, 2013. We've got him. We're going to get the answers we want. I'm so excited at this moment that all of this is now finally going to happen after all of these months of investigation. On the day of the takedown, everything was in place. Outside the airport, I had hostage negotiators, I had SWAT teams on standby, and I had snipers up on the roofs in case our undercover officer was put in jeopardy while getting into the car with Brunton. We had support teams out in Peterborough to keep an eye on Brunton's home. Everyone was reporting back to me over the radio, so I would know what was happening in all of these different locations at any given time. I was anxious and excited at the same time. Brunton drove out of his driveway, he went directly to the 115 highway. We had our mobile support team following him. He got onto Highway 401, which is exactly the route you would need to do to get to the airport, and then all of a sudden, he turned off the highway, and I'm thinking why he's turning off the highway. What's going on? Brunton turned into a mall parking lot, so the mobile team followed behind him. They're letting me know he is in the washroom. I'm thinking, okay, it was a pit stop. He's going to get back in his car and continue to the airport. I'm getting real-time information from the mobile team that Brenton is leaving the mall. He passed the 401 West exit, he's now getting on the 401 East. I'm thinking, what is he doing? He's not supposed to go that way. Did he get cold feet? They followed Brenton right back to his house. He goes inside, and he doesn't come back out. I felt defeated. But we can't let him stay out in public when we know what he's doing regarding child exploitation, I thought. Brenton was arrested in his house and brought to the station. In the last 48 hours, I would have been lucky if I had 2 hours of sleep. I'm thriving on adrenaline at this point. As I'm walking towards the interview room, I know that Brenton is waiting on the other side of that door. I didn't know what to expect. What personality I was going to see. Is he the husband and father? Or is he Master Chef? He's got his head down, and he's got his hands crossed on the table. I said, we have evidence from your computers that you've been filming boys in the hockey arena in Peterborough. I'm reading off his charges. And he did not react. We have evidence that you're involved in a cannibal website. We have evidence, at least virtually, that you've admitted to killing somebody, I continued. You could see his whole demeanor changed, like he was proud of it. He said that he had admitted to the killing. He had also admitted to eating human flesh. But it was all fantasy-based, and that he's never really done that. I didn't want to believe him, but I couldn't prove otherwise. It's extremely frustrating because we still don't have the answers that we're looking for. I had the officers come in and take him to his cell. I watched him walk out, and I still wondered, are we going to find anything at his home? The entire house was forensically examined. More evidence was located in relation to the child exploitation charges, but nothing with regard to the 3 missing. Learning that was hard. I was thinking to myself, now, where else we go? What else do we look at? How are we going to solve this? 65-year-old James Alex Brunton walked out of court after being sentenced for child exploitation. There was nothing that linked Brunton to the 3 missing men. Did I want there to be something? Absolutely. Did I want to find some closure for those families? Absolutely. But Brunton wasn't our guy. The case had taken a toll on me. Meanwhile, you know, I had a daughter at home who was also needing her mother, and I wasn't there as much as I should have been. And that was pulling on me. It was just the best decision for us as a family for me to retire from policing. I still can't let go of the missing. That continually haunted me. I wanted closure for the community, and the families, and selfishly for myself. Some years have gone by, and it is now July 2017. I'd been away from the police service for 2 years. I was relaxing with my daughter watching some TV, and the phone rang. It was my boss from the time that I was investigating the missing men. He said, "It's happened again."